Alright, Xiaomi Mi 10s. At the time of this review, I bought this phone brand new in a Chinese shop here in Zhengzhou, China. 3,800 RMB, which is about 550 US dollars, about 480 euros. The lower models, 12 gigabytes, sorry, 8 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigabytes of storage, are 3,200 RMB, which is exactly 400 euros. That's the price here in China. Design. When you look at the back, it's very reminiscent of the Xiaomi Mi 10 Ultra. You have a review on that device on my channel. However, the camera hub is smaller. So even though it resembles it, the cameras are not the same. This is a 108 megapixel sensor, whereas the one on the Mi 10 Ultra was a 48 megapixel, but it wasn't even an IMX sensor. It was a completely different company. The camera on the Mi 10 Ultra is better than this, but we'll get to that later. Display, I'm pretty sure that every single Xiaomi phone right now, at least the flagships, have the 6.7-inch diagonal punch hole here. Curved display, the panel is probably not exactly the same as the Mi 10 Ultra, but I think it's the same as the ones on the Mi 10 and the Mi 10 Pro. Again, I'll get to that a little bit later. What's good about the actual design? Volume rockers on the side, power button, and that's pretty much it. Two massive grills here and here. You get two stereo speakers, and the earpiece speakers separate, so whatever audio comes, it comes from actual dedicated speakers. The device I was using prior to this one was the Xperia 5 Mark II, and the enormous issue that I had was that the speaker or the earpiece grill here was made to be a dust magnet. So here you have an actual, let me show you that. Yeah, you have an actual grill, so nothing can come inside. And the reason this is good is because whether it's day one or you had the phone for 2 years, there is no lint or dust that it can get anywhere, so your phone is always going to look brand new premium. As for the sides, I really did not see any imperfections. I had no issues with phone being uncomfortable or something jaggedy edges like ripping into my hand. So with that in mind, it's perfect. The camera bump is fairly small, fairly compared to a lot of phones out there. And let me see where, yeah. As usual, Xiaomi included a TPU case in. You get a TPU case, you put it on, and that camera bump is no more. Like, it seamlessly transitions into. Note that the TPU case I got with this phone is not as good as the one on the Mi 10 and the Mi 10 Pro. They were sturdy, rigid. This is a little, flimsy, but it'll do. The display. The panel itself is gorgeous. As usual, Xiaomi has its own theme store. The one I'm using right now is a very white theme. What I like about this panel more is that I think that they worked on color reproduction much better than they did on the Mi 10 and the Mi 10 Pro. Far better. And I honestly believe that this is better than the Mi 10 Ultra in the sense of actual color calibration. I'm not talking about the quality of the panel itself. Again, you have a lot of different color schemes. Saturated, when you go into the advanced settings, you can trigger sRGB, P3. Like they really go all out when it comes to color calibration. So you have your options if you want to, edit photos on the go or whatever. This panel will definitely satisfy you. When we turn to the side, you're not going to see this on the phone. There is no rainbowing. There is a slight color shift towards warmer colors, but that's if you go at an extreme angle. When you're using the phone, it's a much more pleasant experience than the Mi 10, the vanilla version from last year. So as far as it goes, this display is great. The refresh rate is 90 Hertz, which helped drop down the price of the phone, and on its own, it's going to consume less battery. I've been using 120 Hertz phones for quite some time now. Is it noticeable in daily tasks? No, but I feel like the actual touch response is a little bit softer than the Mi 10 Ultra and the Xperia 5 Mark II. So it's not a big deal for most people, but tech community, we're nitpicky, so you might notice that. And that's the panel. Panel is absolutely great. Speakers are ridiculously good. If you go to the DxO Mark, you're gonna see that they gave this phone the highest current score when it comes to audio output. The speakers are just ridiculously good. This is a track I have done with in collaboration with a friend of mine from China, so there's no copyright. When you are playing a track at about 60%, the volume where I set it now, you're gonna feel everything really, really decent. As in, there's gonna be a lot of bass, there's gonna be a lot of mids, very clear. You're never gonna hear this on the camera right here, but this really is the best phone on speakers that I have ever heard in my entire life. When you crank up the volume to the max, the bass is going to disappear slightly, but it's still going to be very crisp, very clear, extremely loud, and there's not going to be any distortion, which is the most important thing. Stock app, I've been trying to use stock apps in this Xiaomi phone as much as possible. When you go to the settings and you literally just have to do ads, you can turn them off, and that's it. Ads and system apps, you turn them off, no issues. Another thing that I wanted to show you, let me see where that is. Battery. The MIUI is fairly clunky and it's packed with a lot of things. The thing that I did not like is that from here to here, this is the time that the phone spent overnight. And this has been happening for a few nights now. The Android system suspend service, I'm not really sure which app it is tied to exactly. It can be a lot of different apps. I've been looking through the forums, and this one in particular drained battery overnight. Nothing significant. It took about 8% of my battery, but it still did take a percentage, and with that in mind, you should know that the MIUI is not the cleanest software. Is it a seamless experience when you use it? Yes. But when it comes to actual, clutter, there is an enormous amount of it. Battery life on its own was very good. I've been managing to get 6 to 7 hours of screen on time depending on what I do. The reason I never went for the Mi 11, rather went for this one, is because the Snapdragon 888 has known overheating issues. In the Xiaomi Mi 11, they just let it loose and they were like, okay, if it down throttles, that's it. Whereas with Samsung S21 series, they have capped the frequency of the CPU so that it cannot overheat, at least not significantly. IR blaster, always present, always a good thing to have, especially around China. I like going to bars and trolling people by turning off their TVs. Don't do that very often, but still, it's fun. Performance, the Chinese iteration of Asphalt 9 and the Arena of Valor, which is in China known as Honor of Kings. Both worked flawlessly with me. The phone did not overheat during gameplay. The issue that I had playing video games is that the speakers are on this side rather on this side, which means that if I grip the phone, and again, me nitpicking, like this, so that the camera bump would be here, I will cover the speakers because I'm trying not to smudge the lens. However, if you turn your phone this way, your speakers are going to be free, but the camera bump is going to be here on this side, which is very visible, and you're going to keep grasping the camera bump, which is a little bit annoying. So this is a minor detail that might be slightly annoying to some people, but not to everybody. Another thing I wanted to show you with settings is that by default, even though this is a China-only phone, if you go into accounts, you're going to see that basic Google services and my Google account work without any side loads, without any ADB push or whatever. You don't have to install the Google services manually. They come with the phone, same as with the Mi 10 Ultra. Camera, yeah, I knew I was forgetting something. All right. The dynamic range on the camera is pretty good. This is taken in my room directly at the ceiling, trying to capture the light on the ceiling. And what the camera did is that it calculated the dynamic range, made everything else dark, and very, very well isolated light as it is, even the little dots. That shows you that the camera is very good at predicting dynamic range. Portrait selfie, me not being the most beautiful person in the world, but I got nobody else to compare. The software edge detection has done a really good job, even here, figuring out where my hair is and how far my hair goes. The edges of the glasses also very well. The hair on the beard is preserved fairly well, and the portrait shots look really good. Back rear camera portrait shots, my lovely girlfriend also had no issues with edge detection. There is a little bit of hair loss here, but I think that is to be expected. Maybe some phones would do it differently, but this one did it this way. These two shots are in a very difficult lighting condition. This one has been taken with the night shot on, with night mode on. What it did good is it preserved the details here, and it preserved the details behind the radiator, even though it's a very difficult lighting environment because the room was dark and I was shooting towards the light. This is with the regular camera, where also it did a pretty decent job. You would take, like, if you really take a closer look and try to notice the difference between these two cameras, you would, but you would have to actually try really hard. The good thing is that both scenarios did very well. Macro camera is really good, and if you know how to use it, really fun. It actually managed to capture dust and lint that I cannot see with my naked eye on my keyboard. So in that respect, the macro camera is also really good. I know a lot of reviewers, have gripes with, oh, it's a 2 megapixel macro camera, it's useless and blah blah blah. No, it's not. It's fun. If you know how to use it, it is fun. Rear camera regular shot. Now this shot is a little difficult, and this is what it did good, and this is where it messed up. The camera managed to figure out, gsmarina.com, the camera managed to figure out and calculate the dynamic range difference between a very brightly lit display and the room with fairly poor lighting, because this is incandescent lighting. So in that respect, it did good. However, it completely crushed the shadows on my JBL speakers. The contours here are very pronounced, as they should be in real life, but the camera did not manage to figure that out. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, because phones and camera systems like this are made for Instagrammable photos that you can just take, snap and move on, put it on Instagram and whatever. The camera had a choice to make between crushing the monitor or crushing the shadows here. So the exposure levels are calculated and priority has been given to the actual laptop display. Regular selfie. Again, my ugly mug. Here, it actually managed to capture the highlights of the speaker. Again, here, nothing really special. But as usual, with a Chinese phone, you get a ton of Chinese filters. And this is what most pictures with Chinese filters look like. So if you want to look like Justin Bieber, there's a phone for you. And that's pretty much for the camera. The video quality is really good. I had no issues with optical stabilization. I had no issues with juddering. I had no frame drops when recording. The audio was really good. There is really no point in showing you that here, because I am recording at 30 frames per second on my XZ1 Compact. So you wouldn't really be able to see anything. Other than that, overall as a package for the price, this phone is a beast. Like I said, Snapdragon 870 rather than 888, because 888 is for me very reminiscent of the 810 era with overheating issues and certain HTC phones and other manufacturers struggling greatly. I hope we're not gonna see that exact same scenario with the 888, but I strongly believe that the 870, or the upgraded version of 865, at this particular point is a better choice than an 888 phone, which generally shows that there is a very good reason why they came out with two quote-unquote new CPUs this year. As a general phone, the experience is really good. The display has been significantly improved over the last iterations. Like, I really, really love it, and I am nitpicky. I've been using the Xperia 5 Mark II for quite some time. The cameras are good. They're not wow, blow your mind, but you have a lot to work with. 108 megapixel sensor is going to give you a lot of detail if you want to crop in and edit your images. And when I say it's not wow, like, the camera is really good as any other Xiaomi phone. If you're a professional photographer, you're probably going to be looking into an Xperia 5 or Xperia 1, but it's a great camera. Like, it really gives you the experience that 99% of the people are actually going to look for. The speakers and the audio in your headphones is ridiculously good. Like, I again came from a Sony device which has the legacy of Sony making Walkmans and whatnot, and this completely blew my Sony out of the water, both the speakers and the headphone experience. Sadly, there is no headphone jack, but the LDAC works flawlessly. Any questions you might have, ask in the comments, let me know, and I'll be sure to answer them as quickly as possible. Have a good one.